Now we're going to look at using Visual Studio as your main editor for IoT projects using Node.js. There are some features in a rich IDE like Visual Studio that are particularly awesome in this scenario. Let's have a look. As I mentioned, sometimes I just want to edit a text file, and I might use a variety of tools for that, depending on the scenario. If I want to manage a project, I'll use Visual Studio for a number of reasons. I can keep multiple related projects in a single solution, which is a real convenience. I get really good IntelliSense. The IntelliSense in Visual Studio is not just parsing the code files, it's actually evaluating them and discovering all the symbols, so it knows things like which variables are in scope currently. If you're a GUI person, you get a nice graphical way of doing most of the stuff that you can do from the command line. I'm not so much a GUI person, but you may be. There's good GUI too for Visual Studio's Git support, which makes collaborating on projects something that you can do with a mouse. And finally, I like that despite the fact that Visual Studio is far richer than the other editors, it's also still free. You can get the free community edition of Visual Studio at visualstudio.com. Now, all those advantages I just mentioned are just Visual Studio itself. If you're working on Node.js projects, then the Node.js tools for Visual Studio are amazing and indispensable. I love them. With them, you get local and remote debugging, and by the way, it's pretty cool to be pressing F10 to step through your code while watching your IoT device on your desk take one step for each click. You also get good Node.js project support, and that support includes IOJS, ES6, and TypeScript. Awesome. You get a graphical user interface for NPM in your project. That means that it's going to act a lot like NuGet in Visual Studio if you're used to that. You get an interactive window, much like the Node REPL at the command line. You get performance profiling, which is really huge, so you can see what part of your project is taking up all the time and causing it to perform slowly. You get the ability to easily deploy back-end projects to Azure, and you get a good test explorer for running tests. You can go to Microsoft/Node.js tools on GitHub to download the Node.js tools for Visual Studio. You can even contribute to the project if you'd like. While I was developing this course, Microsoft announced Visual Studio Code. Code is a brand new editor that works as well on Mac and Linux as it does on Windows. It's a significant departure from the Visual Studio editor that we know and use today, and so far I think it's going to be complimentary for me. I think I'm going to like it. What's exciting about Code is the fact that it's light and lean. It starts for me in just over 2 seconds. I've already set it as my default editor for all types of code files, even Markdown files. It's in preview at this point, but it works really well. I've worked in a bit of Visual Studio Code into the demo coming up next, so hold on tight to see what it looks like.